Shedeur Sanders put on a show today when the Cleveland Browns had their training camp number 6. I'm telling you right now, all the players are there. And guess what? Shedeur Sanders didn't disappoint. You see that pass out the gate. That boy dropped back and hit Casey Concepcion on a bomb. That Shedeur Sanders was locked in, y'all. He was locked in all day. Even though
16 throws, 19 attempts, 0 mistakes. And by the time the sun went down on that practice field, the Cleveland Browns quarterback room had a problem nobody wanted to admit out loud. Because the kid they drafted late, the kid the internet turned into a punchline back in April, just walked off that field and made the starting quarterback look like he didn't belong there. This is the story of a training camp practice that wasn't supposed to matter, just another rep day buried deep in a long, grinding August. Nobody outside of Cleveland was even watching, and by the next morning, his name was everywhere. Let's talk about what actually happened and why it might change everything. Here's the setup. Deshaun Watson, the guy the Browns handed a fully guaranteed, record-breaking contract to a few years back, is still QB1 on paper, still taking the first-team reps, still technically the guy this whole offense is supposed to be built around. That's not opinion, that's just where the depth chart sits right now. And Shedeur Sanders, he's working with the twos, second string, backup reps, the scraps if you want to be blunt about it. Rookie receivers running his routes, guys still learning the playbook, guys who might not even make the final roster. That's who he's throwing to. You'd think that matters. You'd think a receiving corps full of unproven rookies would drag a young quarterback's numbers down, make him look shaky, make him hold the ball too long, make him miss. It did the opposite. Watson threw 2 interceptions on back-to-back series, 2 with the first-team offense, with his guys running full-speed NFL routes. One drive, drop back, throw off his back foot, picked off clean by Denzel Ward. Next drive, same story, another pass, another turnover. Meanwhile, on the other side of that practice field, Shedeur Sanders is quietly putting on a clinic. No picks, no forced throws, no hero ball nonsense. Just a young quarterback moving the chains, hitting his guys in stride, and doing it with backup weapons that most fans couldn't name if you ask them. That's the tension. That's the whole story in one practice, and that's exactly why it went viral by that night. Now, let's rewind for a second, because you can't understand why this moment hit so hard without understanding what Shedeur Sanders has been carrying since April.
Deshaun Watson took all the reps today with the first team. Shedeur Sanders had the reps today with the second team. But guess what? He had all the rookies wide receivers. That's Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, and Isaiah Bond, and they went to work. Now, Deshaun Watson, first 2 passes, interception, right there on the screen. Drop back, tried to throw it to a wide receiver, looked like thrash, and guess who intercepted?
This isn't a kid who slid into the league quietly. He fell, publicly, painfully. Team after team passed on him in the draft, round after round, while cameras sat in his living room, catching every second of it on camera for the world to see. That kind of fall doesn't just hurt your ego. It follows you. It becomes the headline before you've thrown a single NFL pass. Analysts picked him apart before he ever put on a helmet in the league. Too much attitude, they said. Overhyped by his last name, they said. Won't translate to the speed of the NFL, they said. And by the time Cleveland actually called his name, deep into the draft, the narrative had already been written. Bust, reach, charity pick because his father coached in college. That's the weight this kid has been walking around with every single day of this camp. So when you watch him line up with backup guys, with rookies who don't even know the terminology yet, and he still delivers a clean, mistake-free day against a real NFL defense, that's not just a good practice stat line, that's a message. And people noticed. Local Cleveland radio picked it up almost immediately. Hosts who cover this team every single day were sitting there live on air, basically saying the quiet part out loud. This competition is not what people assumed it would be. One of them put it plainly, telling Browns fans to just let themselves enjoy this, to stop being cynical about it, because a real quarterback battle, an actual one with actual stakes, is rare. Most fan bases don't get this. Most fan bases already know who's starting in September. Cleveland doesn't know, and that uncertainty, painful as it might be for some fans, is turning into the most entertaining storyline in the entire AFC North. But here's where it gets more interesting, because this isn't really about one stat line from one Tuesday practice in late July. It's about pattern. It's about what happens after the whistle blows. After that practice wrapped, cameras caught Shedeur staying out on the field, not stretching, not walking to the locker room with the rest of the roster. He stayed behind with the third-string rookie quarterback, running him through extra reps, talking him through reads, giving up his own recovery time to help a guy who might not even make this roster in September. Think about that for a second. This is a guy who is fighting, actively fighting for a starting job in the NFL. Every rep matters for him right now. Every ounce of energy could go toward his own preparation, and instead, he's using it to develop a teammate who's currently his competition for a roster spot, not even a backup role. That's not something a coach tells you to do. That's not in a playbook. That's just who he is when the cameras aren't required to be rolling. And it stood out, because nobody else on that roster did it. Not the starter, not the other veteran arm in the room. Just Shedeur.
Yeah, nothing's really changed. We anticipate alternating. First of all 4 quarterbacks are going to compete. They all won't get equal reps. Obviously, we will alternate just like we did in the spring with Deshaun and Shedeur with the ones. Easiest way for me to say that, and it still won't stop you from asking, not you particularly, but everybody in general, is the first game. And we're going to have a starter the first game, right? I mean, ultimately, I'm not going to decide who the starter is. They decide by their play. Their play decides who the starter is. I don't have any preconceived.
Little moments like that don't trend the same way an interception does. They don't make flashy highlight reels. But inside that locker room, inside that building, those moments build something that stat sheets can't measure. Trust, respect. The kind of thing teammates notice, even when the cameras miss it. By that evening, it wasn't just local radio anymore. Clips of that stat line started circulating everywhere. Highlight accounts cutting together his throws, fan pages putting his numbers next to Watson's, side by side, no commentary needed because the numbers did the talking on their own. Comment sections filling up with the same question, over and over, phrased 100 different ways. Why isn't this kid getting first-team reps yet? That's the thing about a moment like this. It doesn't need a marketing push. It doesn't need a press conference. One practice, one stat line, and the algorithm does the rest. Because people were already primed to believe this story could happen. They just needed the receipts. And once it's out there, once it's trending, it stops being just a football story. It becomes a referendum. People who've never watched a single Brown snap in their life suddenly have an opinion on who should be starting at quarterback in Cleveland. That's how you know a story has crossed over, when it stops being a local headline and starts being a national conversation. Some of the reaction was pure celebration, vindication, honestly, for anyone who believed in this kid back when believing in him wasn't popular. But some of it was pushback too. Analysts on national shows reminding everyone, fairly, that a clean practice against a scout team look isn't the same as a clean performance in a real NFL game, under real pressure, with real consequences on the line. That backup weapons and second-team looks are exactly that, backup looks, not the same speed, not the same disguise on defense, not the same stakes. That tension, the believers against the skeptics, the highlight reel against the fine print, that's exactly what makes this story impossible to look away from. Nobody knows who's right yet, and honestly, that's the appeal. Now let's talk about the man actually making the call, because ultimately none of this matters unless it changes a decision. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has been careful, deliberately careful, about how he talks about this competition. No promises, no favorites named out loud, just a simple, repeated message. The players will decide this with how they play. He said it almost word for word when reporters pushed him on it after practice. He's not going to hand anyone the job based on reputation, based on contract size, based on draft status. It comes down to production. It comes down to what happens between the lines. That's either the most fair approach a coach can take, or it's the most nerve-wracking sentence a franchise quarterback on a guaranteed deal could possibly hear, depending on which side of the quarterback room you're sitting on.
Those are some highlight clips today from today's practice at training camp with the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders looking good. Shedeur Sanders really looking like the leader on the team right now. After practice, Shedeur Sanders took the rookie quarterback, Tylen Green, and talked to him and gave him a chance to get some more reps in because the reps is going to be limited. Shedeur Sanders showing leadership.
Because if it really is that simple, if it really does come down to who plays better, then Tuesday's practice wasn't just a good day for Shedeur Sanders. It was a data point, one in a growing pile of data points that all seem to be pointing in the same direction. And if you want to understand why this particular story hits different, think back to every other quarterback competition you've ever watched play out in the NFL. Most of them are theater. Everybody already knows the ending. The guy with the bigger contract wins. The guy with the higher draft pick wins. The battle is just a formality, something the front office lets play out publicly so it looks fair, when really the decision got made in a meeting room months earlier. This one feels different because the guy with the bigger contract is the one struggling. The guy with the lower draft slot is the one delivering. That inversion is rare, and when it happens, when the guy who wasn't supposed to have a real shot starts out playing the guy who was handed the job, that's when a training camp story turns into something bigger. That's when it turns into a redemption arc. Football fans have seen that story before. A guy nobody believed in walks into a building, quietly outworks everybody, and by the time anybody notices, it's too late to ignore. Those stories don't happen often, but when they do, they become the stuff people talk about for years, not weeks. And right now, in real time, Cleveland might be watching one of those stories write its opening chapter. Let's zoom out and look at the whole roster around this quarterback battle, because context matters here. This isn't a rebuilding team desperately hoping a rookie quarterback can save a lost season. This is a Browns team that's quietly built one of the more talented defensive units in the league. Denzel Ward locked up long-term at cornerback, Grant Delpit back on a fresh deal at safety, a young, physical group up front that's still got years of development ahead of it together. There's real talent on that side of the ball, and it's not going anywhere for a while. Add in a front office that's been actively looking for edge rush help, bringing in proven veteran pass rushers to shore up the depth, and you start to see the shape of a team that isn't just hoping to survive this season. They're building something with actual staying power. Which is exactly why the quarterback decision matters so much right now, because everything else around this quarterback room is coming together. The defense is set for years. The receiving room got an upgrade this offseason with a wave of new weapons. The tight end position has real juice in it. If this team gets the quarterback spot right, and I mean truly right, not just adequate, not just game manager stable, but actually right, this isn't a 7-win team. This is a team that competes for the division. That's the stakes sitting underneath every single one of these training camp reps. It's not just about who wins one practice period in July. It's about whether this franchise finally gets out of its own way at the one position that's haunted it for the better part of 2 decades. And that brings us back to Shedeur Sanders, standing in the middle of all of it. Because here's the honest, uncomfortable truth for Cleveland right now. The guy getting first-team reps has thrown multiple interceptions in a single practice period, more than once this camp. The guy getting second-team reps with backup weapons has not turned the ball over, not once, not through this stretch of camp.
Tony Gross is speaking on the defensive end they brought in today to interview Clowney, see would they bring him back this year to go with that defense. The absence of Myles Garrett. You could put him on the opposite side of Hurst, or he can be his bag up to give him a break and a relief at times. So, the Cleveland Browns got a good team this year, y'all. They just got to go ahead and hurry and name.
You can talk about sample size. You can talk about the difference between first-team pressure and second-team looks. Those are fair points, and any honest analyst will tell you that. But at some point, numbers start to speak for themselves, and fans, coaches, and front offices all start listening whether they plan to or not. If you're a Browns fan watching this play out in real time, here's the emotional whiplash you're riding right now. Hope, because a talented young quarterback with a chip on his shoulder the size of Lake Erie is outplaying expectations. Anxiety, because the front office has real money and real pride wrapped up in the other option. and curiosity, because for the first time in a long time, this franchise doesn't already know how its season is going to go before it even starts. That uncertainty used to feel like a curse in Cleveland. This year, it's starting to feel like something else. It's starting to feel like possibility. So where does this go from here? More reps, more practices, more preseason snaps when the pads come on and the hitting gets real, when backup weapons and starter weapons start blending together and every excuse about competition level starts to disappear. That's when we'll really find out what this is. But if Tuesday told us anything, it's this. Shedeur Sanders isn't just trying to make this roster, he's trying to change the plan entirely. And every single day he keeps performing like this, keeps taking care of the ball, keeps showing up early and staying late for a rookie who isn't even fighting for the same job. He's making it just a little bit harder for this franchise to hand him anything less than a real, honest chance. The kid who fell out of the first round, who sat through hour after hour of cameras watching him not get picked, who's been doubted by nearly everyone with a microphone since April, is starting to make Cleveland ask a question they didn't expect to be asking in July. What if the plan was wrong from the start? Before we go any further, if this story is pulling you in the way it's pulling in Browns fans right now, hit subscribe, because this quarterback battle isn't close to over, and you're going to want to be here for every single turn of it. Because here's the thing about pressure. It doesn't build a career, it reveals one. And right now, on a practice field in Cleveland that most of the country wasn't even watching, Shedeur Sanders is showing everyone exactly what he's built to handle. The doubt, the comparisons, the weight of a last name that opened doors and slammed just as many in his face. All of it, every bit of it is still there, following him onto that field every single day. And every single day, he's answering it the only way that's ever really mattered. Not with interviews, not with social media posts, with his arm, with his decisions, with the ball leaving his hand exactly where it's supposed to go. Over and over again, until the noise around him starts to sound less like doubt and more like a countdown. Cleveland wanted a quarterback competition this summer. What they might actually be getting is a changing of the guard, playing out in real time, one practice rep at a time. And if that's really what this is, if this really is the moment the story shifts, then July 29th on a quiet practice field in Cleveland is going to look a lot different in the rearview mirror than it did in the moment. Some seasons are decided in December. This one might already be getting decided in the middle of summer, and almost nobody outside that building saw it happening until it was already too late to look away. Think about where this kid was back in April, sitting at a table, cameras locked on his face, waiting for a phone call that kept not coming, round after round passing him by while people online turned his name into a punchline in real time. That's the kind of moment that breaks some players. Not physically, mentally. It gets into your head. It makes you play scared, play tight, play like you're trying to prove something instead of just playing football. That's not what showed up on that practice field. What showed up was a quarterback who looked loose, who looked like he belonged, who threw the ball with the kind of confidence you can't fake, the kind that only comes from a guy who's already decided the doubt doesn't get to live in his head anymore. That's the part of this story that goes beyond stat lines and depth charts. This is a kid who had every reason to let the outside noise shrink him, and instead, he's using it as fuel. Every snub, every bust label, every hot take from a guy who's never stepped foot in an NFL huddle, it's all just quietly stacking up behind him, turning into motivation instead of weight. And that's usually how these stories go. If you look back far enough, the guy who gets doubted the loudest is often the guy who ends up proving people wrong the hardest. Not because doubt is some magic ingredient, but because the guys who survive it, who actually come out the other side still standing, still working, still showing up early and staying late for a rookie who isn't even fighting for their same job, those are usually the ones built for exactly this kind of moment. Cleveland doesn't know yet if this is really happening. Nobody does. Not the coaches, not the front office, not even Shedeur Sanders himself if he's being honest. But you can feel it building, practice by practice, rep by rep, throw by throw. And when a story starts building like that, quietly, in the middle of a July practice nobody outside the building expected to matter, that's usually exactly when it turns into something nobody can stop talking about. This one isn't over. It's just getting started.